Good morning, all. Suburban Sentinel here with an update on the Clive Bundy Ranch BLM situation. In my humble opinion, this whole mess isn't ultimately about Clive Bundy or his ranch or cows or land use. It is much bigger than that. However, this situation with the federal government is inextricably tied to the Bundy Ranch dispute. So I believe it's important that we be able to talk about the Clive Bundy case intelligently. So let's focus in on Clive Bundy's case. A couple of weeks ago, I put up a video, and this was part one of this Clive Bundy Ranch situation. Now, this was at the time where Clive Bundy was a rising star in the conservative and constitutionalist movement. This was before the racism rants and all this other sideshow stuff. But anyway, the gist of that video was, although I supported the protesters, I was not prepared to elevate Clive Bundy to folk hero status at the time. Looking at the case, his cases against the Bureau of Land Management, at first glance, they looked fairly weak. And I got a lot of hate mail because of that video. A lot of people unsubbed and said you're an SOB and you're an idiot. While that all may be true, my position has not changed. If you did not like that first video, you will hate this one. But I want to look a little bit deeper into his legal claims. I'm not judging Mr. Bundy as a human being or judging any of his actions. I'm limiting this strictly to an evaluation of the underlying legal dispute. I've had a chance now to review the relevant court documents, the claims, counterclaims, defenses, legal briefs, and court decisions of the Bundy versus BLM cases. And although this may not be a popular opinion, I don't believe that legally Bundy has a leg to stand on. Now, first, that doesn't mean I condone what the federal government has done, which is essentially putting a de facto military organization to enforce a civil judgment, but I don't think that legally Bundy has a case. Now, I may get more hate mail and unsubs and all that, and that's okay. I'm here on YouTube to teach, to learn, and generate intelligent discourse, not to win a popularity contest. My only allegiance here is to the truth. So let's look at the Bundy claims in detail. Mr. Bundy does not claim ownership of the land in question. Therefore, any rights to use that land must arise from something other than holding actual title to the property. So let's take a look at Mr. Bundy's first claim is that the federal government does not own the land. The state of Nevada owns it. Well, here's the problem with that. When Nevada became, the Nevada territory became a state, the territory deeded the land in question to the federal government contemporaneously with its statehood. Moreover, this occurred in 1864, at least 14 years prior to the claim that Bundy's family moved onto the property. Now, in response to that, the Bundys claim that it was illegal for the territory of Nevada and or the state of Nevada to deed that land to the federal government. However, this is not the first time a territory or state's authority to transfer or convey title to property to the U.S. government has been taken into question. In point of fact, there is a long line of U.S. Supreme Court cases dating back more than 100 years which validate the process in which a territory or state conveys land to the U.S. government. Now, although his lawyers, and his being the Bundy's lawyers, did not bring this up in the court filings, in his press conferences and media campaign, Mr. Bundy seems to not be so much disagreeing with the U.S. Supreme Court as saying that the U.S. Supreme Court has no jurisdiction. In effect, he is choosing not to recognize the authority of the U.S. Supreme Court, which is a slightly different animal. In other court filings, through his lawyers, of course, the Bundys also allude to a number of agreements with the BLM, agreements with the U.S. government before the creation of the BLM, and or agreements with indigenous tribes giving the Bundy family grazing rights on that land. Despite these claims, there was absolutely no evidence presented at trial of any of these agreements. In point of fact, all of the evidence was essentially contradictory. So I don't believe Mr. Bundy was going anywhere with these supposed either formal or informal agreements predating his ownership of his ranch from his preceding family members. Bundy also claims that he did not get a fair trial in both of his cases. Essentially, what he's saying is that as a branch of the U.S. government, the federal courts were biased against him, and as a result, he lost. His claims should have and could have been tried in state court. Now, I don't want to get into the whole jurisdictional argument, so I'll stick to whether the U.S. courts were biased against him. Were they? I'm not really sure. But what I can say with a high degree of certainty is that he went into court with essentially weak cases and almost no evidence to support his cases. So even if the courts were biased against him, I really don't think that would have made any difference. He doesn't appear to have a leg to stand on anyway. Some people want to portray Mr. Bundy as this psychotic outlaw racist freeloader looking to profit off of public land. Other people see Mr. Bundy as a new American hero, a true patriot standing up for all of our rights. Quite frankly, I don't see him as either. I see Mr. Bundy as a fundamentally good man with a bad case. Is he an American patriot? Well, I don't think so, and that's not a bad thing. I don't see him as a patriot any more than the Minutemen who fought at Lexington and Concord could have been considered English patriots. I see Mr. Bundy as a rebel, and I'm not judging him for that, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. I see him as a rebel, nothing more and nothing less. How we label Mr. Bundy is ultimately unimportant. What's critical here is that the U.S. government sent a de facto military force in an effort to enforce the judgment of a civilian court in a civilian case. Then, the same government tried to quash any protests to this action. This violates both the U.S. Constitution and the Posse Comitatus Act of 1864. When we have for all intents and purposes, the U.S. military threatening to kill American citizens on American soil, that is both unconscionable and unforgivable. That is why, even though I don't support Mr. Bundy's case, I certainly support the protesters that put their lives on the line to protest the government's response to Mr. Bundy's actions. So, thanks for watching. This is the Suburban Sentinel. Please thumbs up and subscribe if you like what you see. And many of you have probably already unsubscribed and thumbs down, and that's okay too. Peace, everybody.